Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Kentucky, Mr. Massie, for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, last night the Rules Committee came out with a procedural resolution for the Farm Bill that violates both the Constitution and the War Powers Act of 1973. Just when you thought Congress couldn't get any swampier, we continue to exceed even the lowest expectations. Section 2 of House Resolution 1176, the rule for the Farm Bill, says that the provisions of Section 7 of the War Powers Resolution shall not apply during the remainder of the 115th Congress to any concurrent resolution introduced pursuant to the War Powers Resolution. What this means is that our leadership has decided that the House just doesn't need to vote on whether U.S. soldiers, personnel, weapons, and taxpayer dollars should go toward assisting Saudi Arabia with its brutal war on civilians in Yemen, a war that has caused the world's worst famine in over 100 years. This isn't the first time that our leadership, using the Rules Committee, has swept under the rug the War Powers Act. They did it last month. And what they did is they hid the vote inside of another resolution, a procedural resolution for a bill called Manage Our Wolves Act. So many members of Congress swept under the rug the War Powers Act without even knowing it because it was in a procedural resolution. But think about what they're doing this time. Instead of specifying a certain resolution that they're going to suspend the War Powers Act for, they're saying any resolution for all of Congress. In my opinion, this violates both the U.S. Constitution and statutory law. But apparently this doesn't matter to our leadership and the majority of the Rules Committee. Just as a reminder, Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution says that Congress and Congress alone, not the executive branch, possesses the power to declare war. Although the Constitution's language unequivocally gives this power solely to Congress, presidents nevertheless continued to launch military action abroad prior to receiving congressional approval. This is why Congress passed the War Powers Act of 1973. Section 5C of the War Powers Act requires the President to remove United States forces at any time if Congress so directs by concurrent resolution. And Section 7 establishes priority procedures for consideration of such a removal resolution. It requires the Committee on Foreign Affairs to report out that resolution within 15 days. You can't let this thing die in committee. It's got to come back to the floor within 15 days, according to the law, since 1973. And then it directs the House must vote on the resolution within 3 calendar days. It can't die on the floor. There has to be a vote within 3 days. But instead of following the law, instead of following the Constitution, the Rules Committee last night snuck language into the rule for the Farm Bill, and this should make farmers upset that are depending on the Farm Bill. They snuck into the rule for the Farm Bill a resolution that deprives the entire House of Representatives of its constitutional right to decide when and where our soldiers should be sent in harm's way. So let me sum this up. Even if you think we should be involved in Yemen, even if you think soldiers should go there, even if you think we should give the bombs to Saudi Arabia to drop on civilians, you shouldn't want to sneak that into an unrelated bill. You shouldn't want to hide that in a farm bill. What good could you be up to by hiding that in another bill? But let's say you're okay with hiding it in another bill because you don't want your constituents to find out where you stand on this issue. Oh, I had to vote for the Farm Bill, sorry. Well, even if you're okay with hiding it in another bill, this is the wrong way to do it. Last time when they swept it under the rug, last month, they specified that the resolution wouldn't have the powers of the War Powers Act, wouldn't have the privileges of the War Powers Act. This time, not only are they sweeping it under the rug, they're preemptively sweeping all of the power of Congress under the War Powers Act under the rug for the entire remainder of this congressional session. It sets a horrible precedent. It's a dangerous precedent. The Speaker's grabbing more power using the Speaker's committee, the Rules Committee, and he's doing so and jeopardizing the power of the House of Representatives. Because for him to grab more power requires us to give more power to the executive branch, to abdicate our constitutional responsibility to decide when and where our military should go. So I urge my colleagues to oppose this illegal and unconstitutional action today by voting no on the rule for the Farm Bill. That's House Resolution 1176. Thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Kentucky yields back. The chair now recognizes